Okay, let's take a look at some recent monster pickups. And we'll start with the comic books. This is Boris Karloff Thriller #2. And I have the light turned down in here. Usually I have a different lighting scheme when I show comics, but I haven't done that in a while, and I'm just going to breeze through this and try to get past the glare there. But anyway, this came out, it actually hit the stands at the end of 1962. In the indicia, it states the beginning of 63, but those comic books always hit the stands like 3 months, in some cases 2 months, but usually 3 months before the indicia date. Indicia is the publication information, usually at the bottom of the front page, first page. This is 80 pages. It's an oversized square bound. It was a quarter back then. You really got some value back then. And one thing that I find interesting about this copy, somebody put paint on the cover. And normally that would be a huge defect for a comic book, but I don't really mind it on this. I guess it's like model paint or whatever. It looks like it was on somebody's fingers. That's probably a partial fingerprint there with paint. I don't know if some kid was building a model and painting it and tried to handle his comic way back in the day or what. But because of the motif of the cover being of a painting and the background of the cover being of these swirly colors, kind of like the Roger Corman Poe movies by AIP with Vincent Price, the beginning of those, the paint actually kind of looks cool to me. I'm not a big stickler anymore for grades on comics, I mean, mid or even low is okay with me. I like stuff like subscription creases and date stamps and store stamps and even names written on the cover if they're not too obtrusive. And I have #1 of this, so it was cool to get #2. Of course, any monster fan is going to idolize Boris Karloff, and that's a classic series. Now here is the next issue, which the title changed to Boris Karloff Tales of Mystery. And the interior art was done by different people, Frank Thorne and Joe Gill and different people. But these covers are done by a guy named George Wilson. He didn't do that #2, but he did most of the painted covers on these. And, these painted covers are a real highlight. That's what sold the book back in the day. The interior is fun. It's fun to read. I read these. They're pretty good to read. Stories ain't bad. Artwork's serviceable, but these painted covers are really cool. So anyway, that's #3. And this really kicked off the series of the new title, Boris Karloff Tales of Mystery. Started in 63, I believe. And here is #4. Another cool painted cover. Of course, you got Boris' picture there. And this is the way I store my comics. They're in the thin Mylar, and that backing board in the middle is acid-free throughout. It's not just buffered on one side. If you're going to store them like this, use boards that are acid-free throughout the whole board. But, I like to keep them. Now, I don't like the stiff Mylar because it can cut your books if you're not careful, and it can even cut your fingers. But these are 1 mil Mylar bags, and these are great. I mean, it's hard to tear Mylar. It really protects your books. And it's actually better for them if you put one in front of the board and one in the back, if you double bag them like that, because it supports the spines better. You've got them turned different ways in the box that way. And this is a placeholder for number 5, which I do not have. Here's number 6. Now this one of the reasons I bought this a lot was because it had this one and number 8, which I had as kids. I got these off of eBay, and I got a real good deal on them. You know, low and mid-grade books these days are a great buy, and I'm not going to say raw. I think it's kind of stupid. I know that's a buzzword these days. If something isn't slabbed, it's called raw. I think it sounds silly. But anyway, to me, they're just comics. They're either slabbed or they're not. But anyway, I had a copy of this as a kid, and this actually came out, I think, at the end of 1963. So I was 4 years old when my mom bought this for me. And I loved the cover even as a kid, and that's why I wanted it. It's great to get it. That's one of the things I'm trying to do with my comics is to reclaim the issues that I had as a kid, you know. And I have most of them. But you know, there's some that I will never get because they're keys and they're way overpriced, and I'm just not going to fool with that. But most of them, you know, I can get. I think with the exception of Batman 181, I'm not gonna pay crazy prices for a book like that. Here's number 7. I didn't have this one as a kid. Another cool cover. And here's another George Wilson painting. I had this as a kid, and this image burned into my brain. This came out in '64. This book was quarterly at this point in the Indicia. I think they might have skipped farther than that on some of the issues, but the original publication schedule was quarterly. And that's just a really cool cover that George Wilson did. And had one as a kid, and now I've got a copy of it again, so that's awesome. Came out in '64. I was 5 when this one came out. And of course, the comic books that I actually bought back then, my off-the-rack copies, when I was a real little kid, the comic books and monster magazines, I read the covers off of them. I didn't know enough to take care of them. But as I got older, you know, around 9 and 10, and like in the late '60s onward, I took pretty good care. I still have a lot of my off-the-rack copies. I still have my Werewolf by Night #1 off the rack, and I still have my Marvel Spotlight #2 off the rack. Those are pretty nice, so I'm glad to have them. I certainly wouldn't buy them at the prices they are now. This is a reprint of a ridiculous title that Dell published, Dracula. They tried to turn monsters into superheroes because everything was going superhero crazy. The original of this came out in '66, and the superhero genre was super popular back then. You know, on Saturday mornings we had Space Ghost and Frankenstein Jr. and the Impossibles, and the Marvel comics were super popular, DC comics, superheroes everywhere. So at Dell they tried to turn monsters into superheroes. The artwork is substandard in this. Pencils by Bill Fraccio, inks by Tony Tallarico. The stories are kind of ridiculous. And even as a kid, when I bought the original of this that came out in '66, I was 7. Even as a kid, I knew that compared to stuff like Fantastic Four and Amazing Spider-Man and some of the cool DC stuff like Tomahawk and all that, I knew that this was crap. But you know, it was a comic book. I enjoyed it anyway. I was a kid. So this reprint came out in '72. This number 6, which is what this is, reprints number 2, which was really the first issue of this. They counted the Universal Monsters Dracula as number 1, which has nothing to do with this. It was an adaptation of the classic. And here's number 7. I think this reprints the next issue, number 3. And then they had a number 4, and I don't care if I get it or not. These are pretty bad. Now, these are 15 cents cover price because they came out in the early 70s, but the original ones that came out in the 60s were 12 cents. And I needed this one for my collection. This is the main reason I bought that lot. And these lots were cheap, really cheap for what they are. You see crazy prices on some of these monster comics. But this is an adaptation of The Wolfman by Dell. And I think this came out in 63. And you can tell, you know, it's got some condition issues there. But, you know, it's a solid copy. It's probably in around very good, I guess. You know. I mean, I'm sure they try to jack it up on eBay. Sellers would, but honest grading by Overstreet is probably in the area of very good. Okay, that's the comics. Now let's look at this other stuff. Let's look at these monsters back here. These are the Stexe Monsters. Now you notice I'm pronouncing that differently. The last video I did, I called it Stexe because I didn't know how to pronounce it. It looked like Stexe, but I actually got a message from the guy himself, and he said it was pronounced Stexe. So we'll go over that real quick. I'm going to put a link in this description of this video to that video. But if you go to my channel page, it's just a video ago. So anyway, go over these real quick. This is the Beast of Blood, also known as the Chlorophyll Monster. And Stexe calls it the chlorophyll mutation does a party trick. He's doing his rip his own head off thing from the poster there. Here is the Closet Monster from The Brain That Wouldn't Die with a victim, cone-headed creep. And Stexe calls this one Drive-In Date. Here is the Mushroom Man. Oh yeah, he signs all these on the bottom. And dates them. STX-23. Mushroom Man from Attack of the Mushroom People, also known as Matango. And he calls it Mushroom Man. And here is the Monster of Piedras Blancas. There's his signed foot. And he calls this one the Troglodyte Decapitator from Piedras Blancas. I guess of Piedras Blancas. Okay, and then he threw in this, one of his cryptids as a freebie. This is the Hopkinsville Goblin. And each one, he's got a whole line of these North American cryptids. So, you know, each one comes in a little bag with a card, and it tells about the background of the creature. And here's one that, it's not a really recent pickup. It's not terribly old, but this is the Jada Creature. And, you know, the Creature is my favorite monster, and I don't buy many Universal Monster figures anymore because I have the Sideshow stuff. I have a lot of the, you know, Diamond Select and NECA and all that. So I make an exception for the Creature. I usually buy Creature figures if they look cool and if they're not severely overpriced. And this is a good figure. Jada Creature. Picked that up. God, it's been weeks, maybe months, I don't know. Anyway, thought I'd stick it in here. And here is one that I was leery about getting because I have two of these things already. Horror Monsters Grab Bag. The reason I bought another one, for one thing, the price wasn't ridiculous. Here's the candy that came in it originally. Sourlets. And there, by golly, are the Sourlets. Petrified, probably. I just put them in this little bag to keep everything together and, you know, kind of apart from everything else. I don't know. I don't think those things are in any danger of messing anything up, but who knows. Okay, now it came with these two little dinosaur figures, and this one is the reason I bought it, and I'll explain that. Now here's the other little toy that came in it. It came with an extra toy, and I think a lot of times they were the little best Plastics Monsters. The people call them Palmer Flats. Some of them are patterned after the original Palmer Monsters from 1964, but they're not made by Palmer, they're made by Best Plastics. But anyway, this Smilodon, made by Best Plastics, I needed this to complete my collection of Best Plastics figures. And most people would look at this and say, wow, what a crappy little dinosaur toy. And that's what people thought over the years, and that's the reason you can't find these things hardly now. So now I've got all 14 of the dinosaurs, and both cavemen, and all 5 of the monsters. And the cavemen and the monsters are fairly easy to find. They repop those later, but I don't think they ever repop these dinosaurs, and they're not really that easy to find. You know, they were mostly just thrown away as junk over the years. And we got some Jigglers. These are homemade Jigglers. I'm not a real big Jiggler guy. I have a few of them. But these were pretty cool, and they were inexpensive, and I just grabbed them. Here's a big-headed skeleton. Homemade Jigglers. I guess the guy made it, whoever made these made his own molds out of silicone, I guess, and poured them up like creepy crawlers. I don't know. Never made a Jiggler before. And here is another skeleton zombie looking dude. But I thought these were cool enough to pick up. And this one is decapitated. But you know, it was a throw-in. It was a freebie. I'm not going to pay money for a decapitated Jiggler, but the guy just threw it in, you know, because I bought the lot. And these are the real reason that I bought it for. Here's one of them. The Rat-Bat Spider Crab from Angry Red Planet, 1960. There's the yellow one. This one is kind of a metallic turquoise and red. Rat-Bat Spider Crab. And here is the movie. There's a picture of the Rat-Bat Spider Crab. Really the main monster. Came out in 1960. So that's the reason I bought the Jigglers, and they look pretty cool on the shelf. And we come to the last item. It's a token. And I did not buy this. I found it. I had bought it back in the early 80s. And it is from the World of the Unexplained in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. See if I can get that thing to focus there. Yeah, it doesn't want to. Anyway, it says World of the Unexplained. Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Great Smoky National Park. And it's got a character there, and their hair has words in it. It's like a mystic seer, I guess. And the hair has words in it like ESP and magic and different kind of, and I think astrology and different things like that. Anyway, it's a cool little piece of history, and try to find one of those. I mean, they were just practically throwaway items back in the day. Me and my dad used to go to Gatlinburg back in the early 80s, and it's not terribly far from here. It's like, you know, drive a couple of hours. And we would go up there and like once a month or once every 2 months for a while there. And the World of the Unexplained was so cool. You know, it started out as a museum of magic and witchcraft, and it had a bunch of the collection of Dr. Gerald Gardner, who's like the father of modern witchcraft. And it was brought over here by Ripley's, and they opened up 2 museums, one in San Francisco and one in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And I have the souvenir book and a brochure and all that. I'll be doing a video on the World of the Unexplained at some time. But anyway, I used to like to go in. I'd stay in there like an hour and look at all that stuff. And my dad would go look around that stuff, you know, and he liked to people watch and all that stuff. And then I'd go play Galaga at Fanny Farkle's arcade and see how many ships I'd have left after I hit 1,000,000. You know, Galaga was my game. But anyway, it was great to find this, man. I mean, I have a safe search on eBay for these things, and none of them ever turned up, these tokens. And I just found it at the bottom of a box with art supplies in it that I had bought all those years ago. And I believe they had like a little arcade at the end of the attraction when you go downstairs. It has some arcade machines, and you bought the tokens there for $0.25 a piece, and the machines took tokens, and that's one of them. So those things are scarce as hen's teeth now. Real hard to find. So anyway, that's a look at some recent monster buys. And, you know, hope you guys enjoyed looking at that stuff and maybe get some ideas if you're interested in any of it about something you want to pick up for yourself or whatever. And I'm probably I'm gonna of course keep this. This is what I bought the Hard Monsters grab bag for. I'm gonna put an extra dino with that, and I'm probably gonna sell that on eBay to get my money back because I just wanted that Smilodon. I got 2 of those things, and I'm gonna put another link in the description for my video I did on Horror Monsters grab bags and best plastics figures. So there'll be 2 links in the description that covers things related to this video. And I will see you guys later. Keep on monstering.